the number of people you're going to have is just going to be, it's going to be a smaller force. I mean, compared to, I mean, how many, there's over 1 billion Chinese people if the war breaks out with them. I mean, I don't want to get cataclysmic about this.
These wars don't just happen out of thin air. I think that's my point.
No, but we didn't start them. We didn't invade Ukraine and we didn't attack Israel.
In today's video, we break down a fiery clash on Real Time with Bill Maher. Tulsi Gabbard goes head-to-head with Bill Maher and Chris Matthews over one of the most explosive debates in U.S. military policy, the draft. Should women be forced to register? Should we even have a draft in 2025? Gabbard doesn't hold back, slamming politicians for dragging America into endless wars nobody asked for. Meanwhile, Maher pushes back, asking why Democrats are even bringing this up in an election year. It's bold, it's tense, and it could shape how the U.S. handles war moving forward. Let's get into it.
We're here with Chris Matthews and Tulsi Gabbard, and the first question is to you. Tulsi, should women be required to register for the military draft? I saw this. This is so interesting. The Democrats, so great at politics. I don't know why they brought it up now. I mean, men, I almost forgot this. Men do still have to register for the draft. Nobody gets...
Well, this is actually something that they also just changed in the legislation through the National Defense Authorization Act. Just a few weeks ago, is now men don't have to register because they're automatically registering them as soon as they turn 18.
Okay.
So you don't have to actually, you don't get to fill out a card or anything anymore.
But I remember I was about to be registered. I just turned 17 in 1973 when they were still drafting for Vietnam, and it was like that was the year. It was like, oh, we're not. Oh, it's like, oh boy, did I luck out on that one. But they still registered you. Now the Democrats in an election year have brought this up for I don't know what reason, saying now we want women to register because there's 250,000 women in the military right now, and if something was so catastrophic that we did have to draft people, why shouldn't women go? But why bring it up in an election year are my two questions.
Well, first of all, we shouldn't have a draft.
At all?
No, I don't think so.
What if it's an emergency?
Well, the fact that they're bringing this up now, to me, points to the fact that the only reason we would need a draft is because our warmongering politicians are starting wars that they know the American people aren't going to support.
Bill Maher questions why Democrats are pushing the idea of drafting women, especially in an election year. With men auto-registered at 18 and no active draft in sight, he sees it as political suicide and totally out of step with voters. Tulsi Gabbard shuts it down even harder, calling the draft itself a bad idea. She blames warmongering politicians for dragging the U.S. into wars the public never asked for. Gabbard points to real national crises like Pearl Harbor and 9/11, where Americans volunteer versus the lukewarm support for recent wars like Iraq.
When you look at what happened after
they didn't start the wars.
Well, when you look at what happened, you look at what happened after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Thousands and thousands of people from all across the country set aside their lives and volunteered because they wanted to go and fight for freedom and security and for peace. And you look at what happened after the attack on 9/11. So many Americans like myself, we enlisted to be able to ensure the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. And so when you look, to me, it's a big red flag that they're bringing this up right now. First of all, as we have multiple wars burgeoning around the world. But as a I've been deployed 3 times to different war zones. I don't want to be in a foxhole next to somebody who doesn't want to be there. First of all, that bond and that trust that exists between servicemen and women who are, when bullets are flying is so essential. You don't want to have somebody next to you who's like, hey, I don't want to be here. I don't want any part of this. That
it's
creates
just numbers.
A huge problem.
Come on. Sometimes
well,
it's just
you're talking about life and death.
You're
talking about life and death.
I know, but exactly. And if we need that numbers of troops, they just are. The people in Gen Z, they're not going to volunteer. I've seen videos of them. They're talking about it. I'm like, no.
Bill Maher calls out Gen Z's clear reluctance to fight future wars, pointing to viral videos where young people openly say they want nothing to do with the military. He sees this as a major cultural shift, one that breaks from past generations' readiness to serve. Maher warns this mindset could seriously hurt U.S. military recruitment if a real war breaks out. The big question, is Gen Z even willing or ready to fight?
generation can't do it. The number of people you're going to have is just going to be, it's going to be a smaller force. I mean, compared to, I mean, how many, there's over 1 billion Chinese people if the war breaks out with them. I mean, I don't want to get cataclysmic about
Well, these wars don't just happen out of thin air. I think that's my point.
No, but we didn't start them. We didn't invade Ukraine and we didn't attack Israel. That's a silly thing to say.
I think the Iraq War.
Drawing on her experience as a combat vet, Tulsi Gabbard defends the power of a volunteer military. She argues that real commitment can't be forced, especially in life or death situations where trust and unity matter most. A drafted soldier, she says, may lack the drive to fight, weakening the team in the mission. Gabbard also questions the legitimacy of recent U.S. wars, saying they lack the urgency and moral clarity that drove her and others to enlist after 9/11. Without a clear threat to national security, she sees no reason to force Americans into service, especially for conflicts the public doesn't believe in.
I disagree.
I think the Iraq War was coming right out of the Dick Cheney's office.
That's true.
Oh, but that war.
That's true.
Yeah, that
Okay,
one.
well, that's not Biden.
That's 200,000 dead people over there, and 4,000 of our people, and that was created by the neocons and Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
They did it.
Chris Matthews joins Tulsi Gabbard in rejecting the need for a draft, citing the Iraq War as a prime example of unjustified intervention driven by neoconservative figures like Dick Cheney. He argues that such wars lacked public support and caused lasting damage, making the idea of a draft even more out of touch today.
That bond and that trust that exists between servicemen and women who are, when bullets are flying is so essential. You don't want to have somebody next to you who's like, hey, I don't want to be here. I don't want any part of this. That
Sometimes
creates
it's just numbers.
A huge problem.
Come on. Sometimes
Well,
it's just
you're
numbers.
talking about life and death.
I mean
you're talking about life and death.
I know, but exactly. And if we need that numbers of troops, they just are. The people in Gen Z, they're not going to volunteer. I've seen videos of them talking about it. I'm like, no.
The debate reflects broader concerns over U.S. military overreach, the ethics of conscription, and the political fallout of forcing men and women to register. Gabbard warns against unnecessary wars, while Maher highlights the generational and political risks of reviving the draft in an election year. Both Gabbard and Maher are skeptical of the draft's relevance today. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below.